MVC3 introduces extensibility to the components providing services for models. First is the introduction of an iModelBinder provider. The component implementing this interface is responsible for finding a model binder given a specific type. iModelBinder provider is very similar to iFilter provider in the sense that in both cases you can write your own provider and then you have control over, in this case, how a model binder is instantiated, meaning you can inject dependencies or rely on an IOC container to locate and instantiate the model binder, just like the filter provider. And also, just like the filter provider, you can have multiple model binder providers registered. However, the first model binder returned by any of these providers that are registered will be the model binder the runtime uses to model bind. You cannot have multiple model binders all trying to bind the same model object. There is also a model metadata provider the runtime uses. This is the component that finds the metadata for a given model, like telling the runtime which properties on a model are read-only or determining the display name for a particular property. There is one model metadata provider that the runtime will use, so if you register a custom provider, you'll be replacing the default provider in the runtime. And finally, there is a model validator provider. You can have multiple model validator providers registered, and their job is to provide the validators for a model, telling the runtime if a model is valid or not during binding by looking at the required fields or the fields that have a string length that has exceeded some maximum limit. You can have multiple providers, all providing multiple validators, and every single validator gets to vote on the state of a model. Is it valid or not? And also create validation errors. For all of these extensibility points, you'll need to either implement an interface or derive from an abstract base class, and then implement the methods to provide the information that the MVC runtime needs.